episode 50, which sounds like a milestone, and it is, but not because it's a round number or a highlight reel moment. It's a milestone because it gave me a reason to stop and properly listen back, not just to individual episodes, but to the patterns underneath them. Because when I did that, across conversations about burnout, AI, rewards, trust, identity, power, conflict, mental health, leadership, something became impossible to ignore. This podcast was never really about HR processes. That's what we thought we were talking about. But what kept showing up, whether we planned it or not, was something much more human. And once you see the pattern, you can't unsee it. Welcome to Reimagining HR with Trina Sunday, the rule-breaking podcast where we challenge our thinking and our current people practices. This podcast is for time-poor HR teams and business leaders who are feeling the burn, lacking laughs, and not feeling the love. I'm Trina, your host, and I'm here to cut through the BS, explore different ways of thinking, and create high-impact HR functions. Because happier, healthier organisations are better for our people and our bottom line. So if you are keen to flip traditional HR on its head, hit the follow or subscribe button so you're the first to know when new episodes drop. I'm here to help and also to shake things up. So let's get started. Most guests arrived ready to talk about sensible, respectable HR topics: technology, strategy, leadership, systems, the future of work. And we did talk about those things. But very quickly, the conversation would shift. Whether it was people analytics with Richard Rosenau, design thinking with Natal Dunk, or AI and fairness with Aubrey Blanche, the discussion never stayed purely technical for long. Because once you scratch the surface of HR, you're not really talking about systems anymore. You're talking about judgment, consequences, ethics, identity, and what decisions feel like for the people living with them. What guests came prepared to talk about was HR. What they actually talked about was the experience of being human at work. And that's where something important comes into focus. Because when I say I listened back to 50 episodes, I didn't do it to count topics or summarize trends. I did it to make sense of what this is actually telling us. Sense making is the work of stepping back far enough to see patterns, not just problems. It's asking, what keeps showing up? What are people saying even when they don't plan to? And what does this actually mean in the real world, not just in theory? It's asking, what keeps showing up? What are people saying even when they don't plan to? And what does this actually mean in the real world, not just in theory? HR is drowning in information, frameworks, dashboards, hot takes, best practice lists that contradict each other. But information without meaning doesn't help people make better decisions. And this is where my work has shifted. I'm less interested in giving HR leaders more inputs. I'm far more interested in helping them make sense of the ones they're already carrying. Because two organisations can look at the same data and make completely different decisions. Two leaders can hear the same feedback and respond in opposite ways. The difference isn't intelligence, it's interpretation, it's sense-making. Once you listen to this podcast through that lens, the themes become unmistakable. One of the clearest patterns across 50 episodes is that HR is where the human weight of work lands first. This showed up right from the beginning in my episode on going from soul-destroying to soul-enriching HR, and it never left. In conversations about organisational trauma with Dr. Yemi Penn, about domestic violence intersecting with work, and about mental health with Peter Slocum from an organisation perspective and Michelle Dorr from a community perspective, HR wasn't positioned as a fixer. It was positioned as a container, the place where fear, grief, risk, and responsibility arrive, often before leaders know what's happening. Later, in episodes like HR Leaders at the Brink with Kelly Swingler and the hidden weight of HR, that reality becomes even clearer. Burnout wasn't about workload. It was about holding everyone else together while quietly disappearing yourself. That's not a process problem. That's human labour. Another theme that kept surfacing, sometimes gently, sometimes uncomfortably, was identity. Not job titles, identity. We named it directly in Who Am I Without the Job Title, but it was everywhere. In conversations with Dr. Catherine Isco about self-respect and value, with Alicia Mackay about credibility and boundaries, creativity being the personal and professional superpower we need with Borby Webster, and in The Human Edge with Beth and Wynne, where critical thinking wasn't just about AI. It was about mainstreaming your professional self in a shifting landscape. The question underneath all of that was the same. Who am I becoming in this work? And what am I trading away to stay in it? HR doesn't just shape organisations. It shapes the people doing the shaping. If you listen to the burnout and the wellbeing episodes together, something really important emerges. People weren't exhausted because they were busy. They were exhausted because they cared. They cared in systems where they had responsibility without authority, accountability without agency, and expectations without any protection. This comes through in conversations with Kelly Swingler and Jemmy Penn, and in truth-telling episodes with Dominic Thurbin. Burnout wasn't a personal failure. It was moral strain, the exhaustion that comes from trying to do the right thing inside systems that make that harder than it needs to be. Trust showed up as the invisible infrastructure underneath almost everything we talked about. Whether it was conflict resolution with Tanya Waters, or leading beyond fear with Prerna Shah, or connection and teamship with Keith Ferrazzi, the pattern was consistent. Systems fail where trust breaks down. And leadership isn't about confidence or charisma. It's about staying in the room, saying the hard thing, and choosing integrity when certainty isn't available. That's not soft, that's courage. And we talked a lot about systems. Rewards with Warren Land, analytics with Richard Rosenow, equity and AI with Aubrey Blanche, and productivity and space being the new rich with Donna McGeorge. And here's the thing. No one was afraid of technology. No one. What people were afraid of was disconnection. The moment systems lose context, the moment efficiency overrides judgment, the moment fairness becomes theoretical, even our most technical episodes kept circling back to the same human question. Who does this system serve, and who carries the cost when it doesn't? And as the podcast evolved, conversations about power became more explicit. In discussions with Michelle Redfern and in episodes about CHROs stepping into CEO roles, influence stopped being abstract, became practical and slightly uncomfortable, because HR didn't need permission, it needed confidence. Influence wasn't about proximity to power. It was about narrative, timing, and credibility. And that's a very different conversation than earning a seat at the table. Some of the most powerful stories across 50 episodes were about what didn't happen. The grievance that never escalated, the conflict that was quietly resolved, the culture issue that was intercepted early. This showed up in grounded conversations with Deborah Wilkes in the UK, with Claire Sieber, Amy Jacobson, and others who described impact in human outcomes, not metrics. The problem with invisible work is that it still costs something. It just doesn't get applauded, and HR carries that cost quietly. And somewhere along the way, my questions changed. I stopped asking what's best practice, and I started asking, what did that mean for you? Oh my God, what did that cost? What did you have to hold? Who did you have to hold? And consistent with my personality, I became less interested in polished answers and far more interested in honesty. Because honesty is where the real work lives. That's sense-making too. So here's what 50 conversations have taught me. This podcast was never really about HR as a function. It's been about how work feels, what leadership asks of people, how systems shape behaviour, and how humanity survives inside them. HR just happens to sit at the intersection of all that. And that intersection matters more than ever. You matter more than ever. But this doesn't feel like an ending. It feels like clarity. And clarity changes what comes next. And we'll have more for you on that very soon. Thanks for tuning in and leaning in to this week's episode as we look to reimagine how we show up for our people, organisations and community. Reach out to us via our website at reimaginehr.com.au with your HR horror stories or suggestions of people you'd love to hear from or topics you want to explore. It's all about people, purpose and impact, and we are here for all of it. Until next time, take care, team.